Like, oh, I'm going to be a podcaster. What's that? Leo Laporte's got nothing. I'm up here in my attic.
What a lovely attic it is.
I got nothing to sell but me, baby.
If you're looking for the crossover traffic, you can count on my mom to subscribe for sure.
Do it fast. Right here on the Anycast. Make it strong, make it last. Right here on the Anycast.
All right, I am here today with somebody who I can only think to call a legend. Even if it is only in his own mind. But
is Judy Garland here? Is Liza here?
A legend in my mind as well, probably in many people's. Leo Laporte, how are you, sir?
I'm great. It's so good to talk to you, Matt.
You as well.
Thank you for asking me to be on your fine show. I don't get enough podcast time.
People say that about you.
Actually, you know, it's funny. I'm semi-retired, which means I only do 5 shows a week.
There you go.
So
yes, it's good to slow down.
Yeah, it's good to slow down.
Yes.
Yeah.
On the off chance there's somebody watching this who doesn't know who you are, the Venn diagram of people who are going to listen to the show and don't know who you are, I don't know if it overlaps, but just in case, who the heck are you?
Who am I? Who am I?
How did we get here? And in 2 minutes or less, what are you hawking so that people can fast forward 2 minutes and skip any sort of commercial stuff?
I'm not hawking nothing. So I am a recovering radio broadcaster, which you might have guessed from the fact that I have my hand cupped behind my ear. Many years. I started in college in 1976, so it'll be 60 years or something soon. It's ridiculous. 50 years soon. And did a little cable network some people might have seen called ZDTV, aka Tech TV, for some time in the early part of this century, which sounds pretty wild when you say it that way. After that, I did a lot of radio about I think 18 years of nationally syndicated radio talking about tech. I was the tech guy on iHeart. And then when Tech TV kind of started to falter in the early 2000s, this new thing called podcasting came along. And since I was already doing a radio show, I thought, well, it's easy enough to turn it into a podcast. So in about 2005, this is our 20th year, I started a podcast network called Twit. That's the only thing to plug. Just Google Twit. And I think in most cases, I'm the first thing that shows up. People often come up to me and say, you know what Twit means, don't you? And I said, yes, of course. That was the joke. It was kind of a self-deprecating acronym. It stands for This Week in Tech. And basically, we do a bunch of podcasts all about technology. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years.
Awesome. And something I don't know the answer to, which isn't saying much, but how did you first become the tech guy on radio? Like, what was your journey to that position in radio?
Well, like I said, I started in college radio, but I started as a DJ. And I did that because I love music. I thought, oh, what better life could I have than playing music I love for people on the radio? But as soon as I got a real job in radio, I realized you don't get to play anything you love. They give
you want to be
sheet.
A program director, not a...
They give you a sheet that says you're going to play this in this order. And then it got even worse because I got on a station that was, light rock, less talk. I don't even know if they still have those. But as the DJ, I realized I was the less talk. They were basically saying, Leo's going to shut up and just play music. And at that point, it really becomes apparent that you're a button pusher. You might as well be working on an assembly line. And every few minutes, you get to say 56 degrees in the city, a beautiful Friday afternoon to you. And here's Neil Diamond. And that's it. And it wasn't very creatively stimulating, wasn't very exciting. At around about that time, I got married and had kids, had kids, and didn't start having them. I've stopped now. But I thought maybe I should do something a little more productive to my liking, maybe with a better upside. And so I kind of transformed myself into a talk radio host. And this was in the mid 80s. And that was a lot of fun, but I didn't like political talk that much. So I would interview people like people who'd written books or people with an interesting story. And I loved doing that. Unfortunately, no one else did. The ratings were terrible. I was working in San Francisco at a station called KNBR, and the program director came to me and said, "There's this new guy. He's really knocking it out of the park in Sacramento. His name is Rush Limbaugh, and we're replacing you." And you know what? To their credit, Rush did get a lot better ratings.
The name's familiar.
You've heard of him.
Yes.
So I had been, among the interesting people I interviewed was a guy I'm sure know, John C. Dvorak. He was a very prolific columnist at the time. I think he was everywhere. And I used to have him on my show every few months to talk about computers. Because really, in the mid '80s, it was computers. There was nothing else. There was no internet. They said, "Okay, you're not going to have your show anymore, but you could do the weekends, 8 or 9 hours on Saturday and Sunday each, and you're going to do every 2 hours a different subject. You're going to have car guys on. You're going to have a real estate guy on. You're going to have wine and food." And I said, "Well, okay, can I get a computer guy on?" And they said, "Nobody wants that." This is 1980, maybe 1990. Nobody wants.
Still San Francisco?
KNBR in San Francisco, the sports leader. And they still are the sports leader. But they've gone, they were NBC. They've got radio, as you may have noticed, isn't doing that well. And this was kind of, in the early 90s, the internet hadn't come along. So they were still in their ascendancy. KNBR was a big station. I convinced them, even though they said no one will listen to this, to let me do 2 hours a week with John C. Dvorak, answering computer questions. And I had all along been, as a hobbyist, going back to when the Mac came out, even before that with the Atari, writing columns and reviews for computer magazines. I'd written for Byte and InfoWorld. And so I thought, well, it'd be nice to combine this hobby of mine with my job, which is being a radio host. John was very generous. He let me kind of answer. He pretty quickly realized I wasn't just Mr. Announcer guy on the show, that I could answer some of these questions. So we formed a nice partnership, eventually syndicated that show. And really, at that point, I said goodbye to any other subject. Because I thought this is going to be, this computer thing might go somewhere. So I decided to kind of devote my life to technology programming around about 91 or 92. The tech guy came along much later. I did tech TV, and I was the fourth employee at CNET, and I'd done a bunch of stuff. And a woman I'd worked with in San Francisco at KGO, the big talker in San Francisco, had become the program director at KFI in Los Angeles. She had just lost he was, I think, the computer guy on KFI. Or no, he was the PC guy on KFI, Jeff Levy. And she called me up in 2004 and said, "Jeff's going cross town to KNX. We need a computer guy, but can you be the tech guy and cover it all? Because cell phones were coming along. The internet was hot." So I said, I sure can. I'd love to do that. So I started doing a weekend show on KFI, which was an iHeart radio station, eventually syndicated that on their premiere thing in 2000. I guess my first tech guy show was 2004, and I think we syndicated it a couple of years later. And I did that until just a couple of years ago, every Saturday and Sunday for 3 hours. Hello? I used to be getting my internet from Linksys, but something's gone wrong and I can't get it from Linksys anymore. I said, "Do you have an internet service provider?" "What's that?" Literally, this woman called. I think it's on YouTube. She was using her neighbor's Wi-Fi. She thought that was the internet. It was called Linksys.
Yep.
He changed his password, and she went, "My internet stopped working." That was the level of people I was talking to, which I liked, because it was normal people who were trying to kind of struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I often think, we're geeks. And even as geeks, we struggle with this stuff. But imagine a normal person who has no interest in technology, no ability in technology, no background, trying to figure out how to program their VCR or get their lights to turn on with the voice command from... It's crazy. So there was a lot of demand, I think, for this role. I just retired. I did it for a long time, and I just decided to retire. And it was taken over by Rich DeMuro, who does syndicated television. Mm-hmm. Started at KTLA in Los Angeles. Rich is a really good guy. So he's still doing that show. But he's not the tech guy. Only I am the tech guy.
The tech guy has come and gone.
Yeah, the tech guy has left the building. Yeah. Actually, that was one of my best moments was, it turned out Steve Martin was a fan. When he lived in Los Angeles, or even when he would go on the road, he would bring the Tech Guy podcasts. He told me when he was doing the movie in Canada that he was so lonely and bored, he would listen to the show every night. So he DM'd me on Twitter and said, "I'm a big fan. No need to respond." Of course I responded, and we became friends. And so he, on my last show, he announced my retirement, which I thought was pretty cool. To have Steve Martin do that. I've never talked to him since, but
so I have a friend. I have a friend who just moved to San Diego, and he was talking to me about the weather, and I had to find the LA Story clip of Steve Martin, and I can't remember who the weatherman was, but the weather is sunny and 72. All right, the next weather report in 4 days.
That's exactly why I got out of being a DJ. It's kind of mind numbing.
Yeah,
it changes.
I mean, you must have. I mean, what was the ride like at Tech TV, and how do you bring that forward into? Hey, I'm going to start my own network, and to today.
So I had started working for Ziff Davis, which at the time was the big computer magazine publisher. They had PC Magazine, a bunch of other magazines. In the early 90s, they had a television division, which was just me and Gina Smith. We were the TV division, and eventually did a show for them that they bought airtime on CNBC for and stuff. And that show they canceled after a year. And Gina, they said, just you go down, meet with MGM and different people and pretend we're doing something. And they never did until Christmas 1995, when I got a very urgent call a week before Christmas from Ziff Davis saying Microsoft and NBC are going to form a joint venture called MSNBC, and they think they need a technology show. Can you help us? So I wrote a treatment. We went to 30 Rock, went up in the elevator, the executive floor, and the news director at the time, Andy Lack, got in. He came in a 3-piece suit with cowboy boots and put his cowboy boots up on the table, said, "All right, pitch me." And we pitched a show that ended up being The Site on MSNBC. In fact, we launched when MSNBC launched, but about a year and a half into the run, Princess Diana died tragically. MSNBC went to wall-to-wall coverage and said, that technology, I guess we don't need that anymore. So they just canceled the show. Ziff Davis said, well, what are we going to do with all this? We have all these assets. They decided to do a cable channel, which was I think, advised. When I worked for CNET back in the early 90s, Halsey Minor said, all right, CNET's going to be, in fact, the name tells you, a television network devoted to computing. How much is that going to cost? And I did the due diligence for them. And I said, well, CNN lost $500 million a year for 10 years. How many billions can you lose, Halsey? And he said, we're not going to do a TV network. He decided very wisely to do a website that was supported by TV time that they purchased. And that actually worked really, as you know, worked really well for CNET. I left CNET and went to ZD. Halsey and I didn't quite see eye to eye. And so I had some familiarity with the difficulty of starting a cable channel. My lips are sealed. So I helped them get ZDTV off the ground. They quickly realized that when you called in ad sales and said, I'm calling for ZDTV, they thought it was the macaroni channel. They didn't understand what ZD is. They thought it was ZD pasta. So Paul Allen at this time had put in about, I think, 100 million. So he said, how about Tech TV? They'll make it a little easier to do the ad sales. It was really exciting at the time. Remember, this is 1998. This is before the crash, of course. It should happen a couple of years, but things were really booming. Steve Jobs had come back to Apple. They were releasing the iMac. The internet was really starting to change people's lives. So it was a very exciting time. And those of us who got together to make ZD TV, later Tech TV, really kind of knew we were getting an unusual amount of freedom to cover something really interesting and exciting. So I did a couple of shows for them, The Screensavers and Call for Help, both nightly. I did 2 shows every night, 5 days a week, and loved every minute of it. But Paul Allen, they made some missteps. They decided they were going to do a news block, like 12 hours of full-time news, tech news. And there's, at that time, there were only a handful of tech stocks. So your stock report was like, Microsoft unchanged. It was very much like the San Diego weather report.
Yeah.
Microsoft, same.
Still
nothing,
public.
Still public. Yeah, that's about all you could say. Still public. Not really anything happening there. So it wasn't the most compelling. And he spent millions of dollars to do this news block. Anyway, at some point he decided to cut his losses after losing. But I guess I was kind of prescient when I told Halsey Minor he lost about $600 million in his 3 years. And so we knew the end was nigh when groups of Japanese businessmen would come together in a gaggle led by our GM going like, you could tell they were kicking the tires that they were going to sell it. And that's actually when I started doing the radio show because I thought I need a backup plan. And it worked out well. They did ended up selling it to Comcast, of all people, and they merged it with their failing gaming channel, G4, and both ships sank a couple of years later, and that was the end of Tech TV and G4. But I had found a lifeboat in radio, and I was very glad to get back to it.
Yeah. It seems like starting a podcast network in 2005, I don't know that you could lose $500 million a year on it, but it seems like there were some risks.
Well, if it weren't so cheap, I wouldn't have done it. See, I had all the equipment as a radio guy, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a big risk. It was more like I'm already doing the radio show. How much could it cost to make an RSS feed, basically?
Right.
And that was the first one in the fall of 2004. It was, I think, probably one of the first 10 podcasts, real, RSS feed podcasts. And then we started to expand, but we bootstrapped it. If it weren't for you, it might not have existed at all because I was kind of naive about the whole thing.
I didn't subscribe a lot, if that was...
No. You knew you did more than that. We're there. First thing I had a website, right? And you'd go to the website, you download, and that worked for the first 5,000 people. But, then it's 10,000, 20, 30, 40,000, and the website's dead. So we started begging people to seed BitTorrents. And we made like onesie twosie deals. We had AOL Radio took a couple of shows, and these are still just audio, so they're not even that big. And you called me and you said, CacheFly can help you. And that was we would not literally, I'm not saying this to blow smoke up your skirt.
Go on.
You like it, don't you? The bandwidth would have been prohibitive. So that was the thing that I couldn't afford. Everything else was, pretty straightforward. We bootstrapped everything. Podcasting's cheap. You could do it with a laptop.
Yeah.
And that's why there are literally, I don't know, like 10 million podcasts.
Yeah.
There's millions of podcasts because anyone could start one. But when I started it was easier to get people's attention because there were just a handful of them. The downside was you had to have an iPod, a Macintosh. You had to have a way to synchronize. It was really a painful process.
Back then too, the premise. Like I remember, ironically, so this season we're focused on podcasting. Last season was entrepreneurs, and one of my first guests was somebody that I used to work with circa 2004. And I came in the office one day and he said, "Have you heard about podcasting?" And I said, "No, what's that?" And he said, "Well, you download it in RSS, you sync it to your iPod, whatever." And he finished, and I said, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Don't ever speak to me.
No one's ever going to do that.
Don't ever speak to me about this again. I never want to hear this." And then
it was a small slice of people that were willing to do that initially.
But then fast forward 2 years, and I'm calling you, and I'm saying, "Oh my God, this is exploding," and vice versa. Like I remember, like circa then, it was like Pete Alcorn and Scott Simpson were running the podcast store. And they would like call people. And again, there was not that many podcasts. They'd like reach out to people and be like, "We're going to feature you on the homepage in 3 weeks. First question, what are you doing for bandwidth?"
Yeah.
And
people sometimes think that Apple provides the bandwidth. They don't, they just provide a link to your poor suffering server.
So like some of our early referrals were Apple, right? They'd call people. And if somebody said, "Oh, I'm on GoDaddy," they'd go, "Okay, you should call CacheFly."
You need a CDN.
Yeah. And
you guys have been great. We, it's pretty much been a trade, which has been fantastic for us.
Well, and
I don't know how many millions of dollars it would have cost us if we'd had to give you cash.
Well, the other way around too. Like for the first 10, like we started CacheFly in 2002. We went live in 2000. Like we started as an entity you could sign up with in 2005. I think for the first 8 or 9 years, the only marketing or at least advertising we did was podcast trades. Yeah, it was you guys. It was Dignation.
Mac Break Weekly is brought to you by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
That's it. And so many people today will still know it. Like back then and still today, the number one search term that drives our traffic from Google is CacheFly.
Good.
It's like people are like, I just don't
where's
know
CacheFly?
Yeah. So it was you early on. It was Kevin and Alex at Dignation. Like those were kind of our early marketing efforts. We're just like, oh my God, you guys need bandwidth. Oh my God, we have bandwidth.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
But the world is different now, and you don't really need the Mac and the iPod anymore.
I knew that. I mean, I even said at the time, as soon as it's easy to listen to a podcast it is to push a button on your radio, then we'll have something. And actually, it's easier, right? It's actually easier now. You don't have to program a button. It's just all here. And as soon as and when I'm holding up a phone, as soon as everybody started, and there was a period of time when if you wanted to succeed, you had to have an app on the phone. But now it's just, everybody uses Pocket Casts or Overcast or Apple Podcasts or whatever. And it couldn't be easier, really. The issue now for shows is discovery. And this is the issue for creators in general. There's so many of us. How do you get noticed? How do you get an audience? I was lucky. I came out of Tech TV. I dragged that audience kicking and screaming with me to podcasting. Yeah. And even then there was only a handful of other podcasts. Now it's tough. I'm not sure I'd start a podcast today unless I were a celebrity. Those are the podcasts that do very well.
Yeah. Do you think there's a solution for that discovery problem?
Well, it was solved with TikTok. We're recording this days before whatever happens to TikTok happens. So we're in the future now. I don't know if TikTok's still around. My son is a very successful creator influencer. He's a TikTok chef. He went from 0 to 2.5 million followers in the matter of months because the TikTok algorithm somehow spotted it. We don't know how it works, but somehow put him on the For You feed. And it snowballs. So really, today, that's still the best way. If you don't have another medium, if you're not the star of a CBS television show, the best way to get your name known is to be on a network that can help you go viral, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. Those things, or Apple's iTunes. If you're featured on the front page of iTunes, you have a shot.
I was going to say the original algorithm was those guys being like, "Hey, we're going to put you on the homepage."
They had huge value. I mean, Scott and Pete were the most influential influencers in the business, and they didn't even have a show because they got to choose who to highlight. And even to this day, the iTunes, top 10 lists and so forth are really, really valuable. The problem is the way they do them. They do them like the Billboard charts do them. They're very ballistic. It's new subscribers. So old shows like mine, I mean, we've been around for 20 years. We're never going to hit the top of the charts again because we're not going to get 1 million new subscribers in a week.
Right.
Unless people watch this show and suddenly discover us.
If you're looking for the crossover traffic, you can count on my mom to subscribe for sure.
That is another way, by the way. If you're not getting on a place where you can get discovered, and everybody does this, you have people who have popular shows on your show and vice versa. I don't know how well that works. We do a lot of marketing, and one of the things that's changed now is you can use AI to do clips. Otherwise, it's expensive we used to do it with people. We still have people, but AI will generate clips out of a show. Then the people look at them, pick the right ones, tighten it up, and so forth. But they do that. They make it vertical. They put in captions. They do a lot of the stuff that helps it go viral on these platforms, Instagram and TikTok and so forth. So it's a lot. There are tools out there to help for marketing. And we post at least twice a day on all of the social platforms, little clips like that, hoping to generate traffic. It's hard to measure. Lisa says, my wife, who's our CEO and runs the business, says it's very effective, but she says hi, by the way. But, it's hard to measure. Every time I say, well, why are we spending so much on marketing? Shouldn't we just stop? She slaps me and I come to my senses.
Yeah, we have a revenue problem. Okay, first thing we should do, cut marketing. We'll have more money for other stuff.
Right. It's wrong. And that's what people do, by the way.
Yeah.
It's one of the problems for podcasting right now, especially unless you're in the top 10. The top 10 podcasts get 50% of all ad revenue. I mean, literally 50%. All the long tail, everybody else is, scrambling. And, that's part of the problem is when you're in uncertain times or an uncertain economy, a lot of companies pull back on advertising when in fact, that's the time you should. I have to say, one of the best times for us was COVID because the companies that were smart enough to say, let's keep promoting ourselves during COVID did very, very well.
Right.
Those were the companies that soared. And the companies that said, oh, it's an uncertain time, we better cut back. Those are the ones that just kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
The Red Lobsters of the world. I shouldn't say that. That's mean. I love the cheese biscuits. I just want you to know.
I know. Like Red Lobster, I mean,
who doesn't?
There's also a difference between, like, even in the CDN industry, I've seen this. There's also a difference between, like, a bad business or being in a bad space and just, like, you are financially structured in a way that makes it hard for you to succeed.
Yeah, we're not Polaroid or Kodak.
Right.
but for the longest time, podcasting relied on B2C, business to consumer advertising. And that if you listen to podcasts, Squarespace and Casper and Audible and Blue Apron, all of those B2C businesses were really good for podcasting and they really kept us afloat, but they have all disappeared. They're either like Squarespace, they said, well, we'd like to spend those millions of dollars on a Super Bowl ad, or like Blue Apron, they just, bye-bye.
Yeah.
So right now we're surviving on B2B, and thank goodness we're in the technology space because there's still a lot of advertising in security and other technology products. So that's kind of saved us. But for a lot of podcasts, B2C advertising just disappeared.
Yeah.
And those podcasts, as a result, disappeared.
You talked about the discovery problem today, and I've had a few people on this season. Conventional wisdom seems to be you just got to get so niched down that you build that audience kind of bottom up from that, subreddit that's really into that, or that Facebook group that's really into that, and then sort of a kind of call it more bottoms up approach to building an audience. Gun to your head, if you were starting a podcast network in 2025, is that what you would do?
Yeah, we kind of did, by the way. I mean, tech is a niche, and we are tech for tech enthusiasts. We aren't. Every time we do something for neophytes, new to tech, doesn't do very well. Mm-hmm. When we try to branch out, I've done shows on junk food. I've done shows, even our shows on, tech adjacent subject matter haven't done as well as the hardcore tech enthusiast shows. So I think I would validate that niche certainly helps. I remember talking to Philip Kaplan. Remember PUD?
Yeah.
Remember, I can't say it. Probably
we were
say it.
My first business was the number one most posted about company on his website.
On Effed Company. We'll call it Effed Company.
Yes.
PUD told me it was actually brilliant. When he started Effed Company, the whole premise of the company was people who hate their company are going to anonymously post memos that make the executives look moronic, inside stuff. And he told me two things that were great. One is his goal was to start a business that's self-sustained. He doesn't have to create any content. He just set up the framework, and then people post it. He said, that's one. Just, you could set as many of those up as you want. It's an annuity. But two, he went out to all the forums where those people would be. So that's right. It's a slice. You can pinpoint who that audience is. And he would write anonymous reviews like, can you believe this site? This is the worst thing I've ever seen. People are leaking stuff from their company. This is appalling. And of course, that was the best marketing ever. And he made I don't know if it's still around, but it was a huge success in his time, right? So I think that's probably the case. That's what I would call guerrilla marketing. So you got to be very creative.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is true that you need to know your audience. So the more general a show is, the more difficult it is to promote it because they're everywhere, right? I mean, are you going to buy Super Bowl ads? Well, good. I hope you have a big budget. But that's why at this point, the rich get richer. That's why the Joe Rogans and the Call Her Daddies and the Smartless of the world, they are basically general interest. I mean, okay, Joe Rogan's to bros, but that's a pretty big group. So all the people wear their hats backward. Oh, sorry, Matt. So just teasing you.
No comment.
but it's still a very big general audience. They have enough revenue that they can keep that marketing machine going. But they're also doing other things like getting in the news, getting big name interviews, and that stuff the little guys probably can't do either. So yeah, I think if you're just starting out and you don't have that name and you don't have that revenue, you're going to have to do some guerrilla marketing, and it's going to help a lot if you know exactly who your audience is. I think a lot of it also is it's easy to describe what you do on that show. So, that's important too, both for the audience and for advertisers. They know what it is this show is all about. It also helps if that thing that it's all about is a passion for you. I've always said this for podcasters. If you don't love the subject matter, don't do it. You got what you're really communicating is your passion. I mean, if I didn't love technology, could I have done this for 20 years? I'd be miserable.
Right.
There are we see them all the time, reporters who cover tech who don't love tech.
Sure.
That makes them terrible reporters.
Like we even talk about that. Like one of our core values in the business is like, you have to make it fun. And one of my reasons is that's important is simply because like, there's literally, for any qualified person who works for us, there's, I don't know, 9.4 million jobs you could be doing. Why would you choose one of them that isn't fun?
I don't envy you because it's got to be hard to recruit at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's an interesting question. It's hard and it's not. It's hard to predict, I think, who can really survive in we have a little bit of a Lord of the Flies culture of like we just kind of throw people into the pot, and there's not like I think I said the other day, I said I've never been concerned that somebody here has been overtrained on the product or on their job. But at the same time, like one of our other core values is cluefulness, which is like I expect that if I just throw you in,
you'll figure it out.
If you're not a figure it outer, you're probably not going to last. Because
Kevin Rose always told me that. He said hire people not because of their skill set, but because their ability to learn, their ability to acquire a skill set.
Yeah.
Don't hire people who can do this specific job necessarily, but people who can learn it.
Yeah, we look for
that was good advice.
We look for like those value fits.
Yeah, that's more important, isn't it?
Well, because it's like,
you're all remote though, right?
We've been fully remote for ages now, way before COVID. When we started, we were in the office in Chicago until 2010 or so, and then it sort of made more sense to do remote, mostly because I left Chicago.
How do you preserve a culture when people aren't in the same space?
It's hard. Like the hardest. It's funny. I mentioned already the hardest value I say when I do. I still meet with everybody as the last interview before we hire them, and when I go through the values, by the way, the one that's hardest for me is that makes it fun,
right?
Because I know how to do that if we were all in an office. Like it's easy. Like I've got that wired,
right?
Online, I have no idea, so it's hard for me. And I think there's other people. I have like my CEO, Dre. He's amazing at like connecting with somebody over Zoom. I find that impossible. Like if you and I had never ever met in person, I would have a much harder time, I think, having a rapport and that sort of thing.
I have to say though, Matt, it would be a lot better if we had a nice steak here. And
so ironically,
Matt is famous for his CES steak dinners.
The genesis of the show. The reason the show is this is what I originally said. I was talking to Paul Culligan, And I said, what I want to effectively do, though, is just set up cameras and mics at like the dinners that we do.
Wouldn't that be? I've always wanted to do that.
Yeah, I said, like,
because those are the best conversations where people are candid,
That's
maybe
it.
a little bit toasted,
Mhm.
and they talk and they engage. And man, wouldn't you always? You'd want to be the fly on the wall, listening into that great conversation.
that was literally the idea. And
Yep.
then like a month later, it was illegal to have dinner anywhere. so it was like so like the
Man, now I'm disappointed because those
know.
are
so then we were like, okay, that's changes things. You can't do
Yeah.
that. Can we like ship somebody like a good camera setup and we like order like Uber Eats a steak? I was like, that's
people have tried that.
but that's my problem in the business, which is like my thing, as you've already identified. I'm a dinner guy. If if we're gonna hire somebody, I say let's go to dinner, and that's how I would, I think, learn what I need to know about you. I would figure out if you're gonna be a culture fit. I remember one time we hired a salesperson who didn't last, and I knew they were not going to last. I don't know, 4 hours after we hired them, because we said, okay,
Let's go to dinner.
Let's go to dinner. And we're all sitting there, and one of my business partners, Jordan, is sitting across from me, and we go around, and the steaks come, and our new hire goes, "Do you have steak sauce?"
Oh.
And my business partner and I both looked at each other, and we just did we've made a horrible mistake look. It was just
really? Because a guy
this is not
like
gonna work.
Heinz 57, he's not going to fit, huh?
Didn't try the steak first. There's so many things about.
Do you have any salt? I need more salt.
Was not sheepish about it. That was high on the list. He wasn't like,
yeah, you should be sheepish.
It wasn't like,
at
hey,
least.
hey, listen. Like if he said, hey, listen, it's just this thing. I know, but like just this, you gotta fine. But just the fact that he was like, I need my my A1 please at Mastro's.
See, I love A1. So
again, it's not a knock on
fit.
A1. It's just the like
It
you
would
got to
probably
know the
not be a good
protocol.
fit. Lisa yells at me every time I make amazing steaks on our big green egg. I smoke them and they're delicious. I cut into it and I put a little A1 sauce on the side, or actually I like Heinz 57, or if I can get it, Bernays. And she just yells at me. Yeah. She just says, "What are you doing? This is perfect."
Yes.
I put some Bernays on a A5 Wagyu the other night, and I just
That's a lot of
hear
fat.
the end of it.
That's a lot of fat.
pretty bad.
That's a lot of fat altogether.
It's good fat.
Yes. By the way, I wasn't saying that in a negative way. I was just stating
it is.
just that would
It's
be.
a melt in your mouth fat is
Yeah.
what it is. It's
But-
very good.
But all of those experiences, I think, I can't have in a remote world. And it's hard.
we're dealing with this right now because we had a studio,
Mhm.
and there was a creative thing that happened when everybody's in the same space and has the same toys, and we're all creating the same show. That is very hard to duplicate now that the studio's gone and each of us works from home. And we're really trying to figure out how this can work.
So the one thing we do, and I don't think it solves your problem at all, because I'm sure you do as well. But and it's also people that you've already worked with. But one of the things that we have to do as our like baseline is we get the whole company gets together once a year.
Yeah.
And then we do in between that, we have people on each side of the Atlantic. So like the European team will meet up, and then the North American and South American teams will meet up. Just for
Does
that.
it help
same
though?
reason. It does.
I feel like it's thin gruel. I feel like
It is. You have to keep it going. So if you do it once, it's. I think it's always effective, and I think it buys you 60 to 90 days. And so that's the challenge, right? So like for 60 to 90 days,
it wears off though.
we did that thing. We had that shared experience. Remember that joke, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You can't be like, hey, remember Leo, remember that joke in Ontario, California in 2005? Like it just doesn't, there's no rapport there that comes with it.
It's funny because most of the people I work with on the shows, the in front of the camera people, are remote and always have been. I mean, one of the reasons we could do Twit 20 years ago was Skype. And we were able to take people all over the place and put them on one screen and have a show. And somehow we've managed to make that work. Maybe it's because we meet every week and we talk about kind of this, we have a kind of a continuing conversation over a period of 20 years. That's worked fine. But it's much more difficult with our engineers and our other staff members who are behind the cameras. And I feel like we have there's something we lose. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, you just want to pay for the building that you built in your office space," or managers just have to look at people to make sure they're working. And it really isn't that. We're you get the job done, or you don't get the job done. It doesn't matter to me if you're doing it in your jammies.
So there's a part of this. I remember actually during COVID, there was a whole bunch of. You probably remember these companies too. There was a whole bunch of companies that started to try and take over this sort of virtual thing that was happening, virtual office companies. And one of the more interesting things I read that they were basing it on was this premise that, like, obviously the rote line is, humans are social creatures. And there was this, I can't remember if it was an article by one of the companies or if it was a university study that they had based it on. But the premise was that humans are actually spatial creatures.
Oh.
And even the phrase, are you close to so-and-so, implies a whole lot of how we structure
proximity.
Ourselves.
Yeah.
And so, what you find is people you're friends with are people you sit near. Or if you don't sit near the people you are friends with, you have a very different, say, workplace experience than the people who do sit with their friends. And the way you experience a meeting in a physical office space is greatly influenced by who's on your left and who's on your right.
Very different from a Zoom call.
Zoom call, but you're also equidistant from everybody. There's nobody you can elbow in the ribs. There's nobody you can make eye contact with.
No wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You're right. Yeah.
So,
and by the way, that's not just business. This is society as a whole, and this is the thing that's happening right now to society as a whole.
Yeah, and so it's, I told somebody the other day, I said, well, I've got lots of, if somebody says they have lots of friends online, it means they all hate the same people. Right? Like
that's the glue that really keeps your relationship.
Well, that's what it
going.
is, right? Like the online, it's like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's how you form your online tribes, right?
Right.
It's like, let's all get upset about this one thing together. So I think is the reason why it's hard. And like for me in particular, like I've said this, at least internally, I don't think I've said this externally before. My problem is I have a hard time with the technology around, whether it's Zoom, whether it's Slack, whether it's all these remote technologies. I get in this mindset where it's like, if we're having a meeting at 9:00, then the meeting's going to start at 9. We're going to talk about all the work stuff, and the meeting's going to end at 9:59, and then we're going to hang up. In an office, that's not what happens, right? You meander in early. You're having hallway conversations. You stay. And like the one thing I know I would never do as a leader in an office is come in through the door. Let's say a bunch of people had already arrived and were working on desks. And I would not walk through the office like this and run to my office door and slam it.
Matt, you're muted.
Every day when I get on Slack or Zoom, I'm not going, hey, how was your weekend? What'd you do last night? Looking good. How's this?
I love down to business.
It's like, hey, listen, this is remote, man. We're here to do our jobs and get out. And there's just no chemistry with that.
That's the one thing that is working for us. We have a weekly editorial meeting, which is pretty much an all hands meeting. Everybody's involved in editorial. And that is much more informal. We kind of sit around. We often go long. We often get off the topic. We have an agenda, but that usually kind of gets thrown out quickly.
Yeah.
And there are people who say, no, we got to do the agenda. And I'm kind of the opposite. I'm kind of like, no, this is nice. This is socializing.
Do the engineers and people make that meeting? The people that you say it's harder?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that's how they feel looped in, right? Is when they're part of the informal.
At this point, it's all we got. And it kills me.
Yeah.
We tried to have a Christmas party, but that fell through. I mean, it's just, and this is all new to us because we, and it was really for financial reasons we closed the studio, not because we didn't want a central space. But as soon as that happened, people moved, and now they're all geographically distributed. Everybody loves the idea of being able to live where they want.
Yes.
Right?
No, like the upsides are obvious, and I just think. I think remote works better for large companies because you're sort of already
You're already disassociated.
You're already meant to be a cog in the machine.
Right, right.
As
right.
opposed to like, our
company's tiny.
I've always
11
had,
people.
Yeah, I've always had small teams. I've always worked in, and to me, it's like, I've always thought that like great tech teams, it's like having a band.
Yeah.
Right. And like, I don't know that Guns N' Roses, if they were all remotely hanging out,
except for Axl, nobody wants to be anywhere near him.
Well,
That's
probably,
different.
but you learn that while you're sharing a one bed.
No, you got to share. You got to share spit. I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and
we're humans. This is our we're still biological entities, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and so I think that you just can't replace it in small teams because that's where the magic comes from.
Right.
You can still have moments of genius, and by the way, there's plenty of great companies, small and large, who've done great things remote, and I just think they're all doing something very. I think you have to do something some combination of unnatural and structured to make it happen.
Right.
Because you generally don't, whatever problems you're worried about now, you just didn't have them when you're sharing an office or in the same way. And it's only because as humans, we naturally do those things when we're sharing this space with people. And as soon as you take the space away, we stop doing the things.
The thing that's interesting to me is that what I do for a living is about providing a certain amount of companionship. I've come to the belief that people listen to at least my shows, and I would say most podcasts, not so much for the content. That's a nice side benefit, but really it's companionship. It's people you know and like, and it's like having somebody in the room with you.
That's why Steve Martin listened. He was lonely in Canada.
Yeah. He was lonely. He was doing a birding movie. I very much, that idea that you had of having a podcast around a meal is very much what I feel like. And I often hear from listeners saying it's like we're all having a beer, except I don't get to talk. And, it's interesting. For a long time, I really thought, well, I want to break the fourth wall. I want it to be interactive with our audience. And I keep trying to do that. And the audience keeps telling me, no, you just want to sit and listen. We like being
You're
the fly on the
interesting.
wall.
I'm not interesting. You be interesting.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what it is. Maybe shyness. Maybe it's a feeling like, I wouldn't have anything. I don't know what it is. We really try. And I've always had, as long as I've been doing this, a chat room going on simultaneously with the programming. That's why we do our programming live, so we can have some interactivity. I've tried, when I was in radio, it was a call-in show. But of course, you remember in radio, the people who call are 1/10 of 1% of the total audience.
Sure.
It's this weird extrovert fraction of the audience that is willing to call.
Hey, Bill, good to hear from you again.
Yeah, that's true. That's the other problem, by the way. You get the repeat callers. I honestly think that people just want some companionship, and they're in the car or they're going to bed, and they like having those voices in the background of people they know, which is why it is hard to start a new podcast, and really like. And of course, the longer we do this, the more of that bond builds up. I think by now, after 20 years, the people who've been listening all that time, we're personal friends. There's a very strong parasocial relationship.
Yeah. Is that something that this is going to be an interesting pivot? Is that something that is what's going to keep content creators in the world of whatever looming? There's a lot of doom and gloom around AI producing content. Like,
yes,
I can't imagine.
Nobody wants
to
become a buddy with a machine.
Yeah, no.
No. That you nailed it. In fact, if you've listened to Notebook LM and the podcasts, they're fine. More, they're just like, wow, that's amazing that they can do that. It's not anything that fills a need in your heart.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't want to hear the LM people more. I just want.
Gee, I wonder what they're
content.
thinking about this.
Yeah.
No, you never think that.
Yeah.
That was the big difference when I went from mainstream media to podcasting. Was in mainstream media, you think of people as an audience. You think of them as, you're up on the podium and you're talking to them and they just sit there rapt and listen. And I really believe that podcasting and any creative, I think every creator I talk to agrees with this. It's about community. You're creating a community around what you're doing. And that's extremely powerful. It's extremely sticky if you do it right. Those people stick with you for years. And of course, AI is never going to, I'm not worried about AI. I have literally hundreds of thousands of hours of audio and video recordings of myself available publicly. I am sure generating an almost exact AI duplicate of me would be trivial. And it doesn't bother me. It doesn't worry me in the least, because I know that people have an affinity for a human. Now, to the degree an AI can pose as a human, maybe in the years to come, you can create a perfect AI buddy. Well, that'll be interesting. That's very Black Mirror, if you ask me.
I was going to say, there's been a movie or two about this, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it could happen, right? I don't know. That's really comes down to the fundamental question about humans versus AI is, what is it that we have that AI and a machine can't have? And it's a religious conversation. Do we have a soul? Is there something that a machine can never duplicate? And if you're a rationalist, as many of our hosts are, we have this conversation a lot. They say, no, nothing happens up here in the brain that can't happen in an AI. And so ultimately, as AI gets faster, better, it's going to be indistinguishable. They really believe AGI is around the corner. And then there are some people, and I think I'm maybe more in this camp, who think there is something ineffable about humans that a machine could never quite grasp. Well, I hope that's true.
I mean, in the short term, with like whatever our shared consciousness definition of AI is, which I think today is the language model stuff. Go back to our conversation about being close to something. Until it's an AI that's a robot, I think until you can physically interact with it, you're still so far away.
That's interesting.
Right? Like, could an AI, let's play out the office environment. Should an AI Slack bot replace somebody who I talk with over Slack? Would I know the difference? I don't know.
Over Slack, maybe not. I mean, you would in in person.
That's what I mean. Well, in person, it's not even an option, right? And there is no in person. It's
the uncanny valley is just too great. But I do think for podcasts or broadcasts where there is a glass wall, maybe, I don't know.
Well,
I hope I live to see all this. I'm fascinated by what's happening. It's blowing me away.
I mean, on one hand, I think it's. I don't think it's going to go as fast as people think, or as people claim now. I think it will go as fast as most people thought 5 years ago, right. Simply because we just don't know what we don't know, right? I still look at Elon Musk, 10 years ago talking about how easy self-driving would be. Right? And he's like, you guys are all idiots. You should see how easy this is going to be. And it's
that's always been the case, that the first 99% is easy. It's the last 1% that's impossible.
And then 5 years in, you go to cut to Elon Musk again, and he's like, you guys don't understand how hard this is. And so I think that's going to happen with AGI, right? Is right now we're in the phase of based on the current growth curve, we're going to get there right away.
Right, but then you hit a ceiling.
Yeah, it's and it's the same with quantum computing, right? Or back all of that out, right? Like, where's my flying car?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it turned out you couldn't have a flying car until you have good self-driving, because people are terrible.
Yes.
And if they have a crash up there, it's really a mess.
Yeah, then you get people below and beside.
Yeah, it's awful.
I mean, my throwaway line for years about AI, and I don't know if it still is true, is like we're talking about technology companies building all these things, and I go, today, examples of things that should be AI in the real world, not like the theoretical world. In the real world, it's 7 times out of 10, if I'm in a bathroom and I put my hands in a hand dryer, it doesn't recognize them as hands. So, that's where
that faucet is never going to turn on.
That's where we are, and AI is taking over the world. It's this technology has one job, and it's to detect hands, and it can't. It can't. So the likelihood that in 2025 we can't turn a faucet on, but in 2027, AGI is taking. I can't get there just because of. There's a guy.
That's a good point.
There's a guy listening to this show probably somewhere, or girl, who's going to say, you don't know how hard it is to recognize hands. Right?
Hands, they could be anything.
Some people have 4 fingers. It breaks the whole model. So that's the thing, is it's so and not to be like, I want to be excited about it. I want to embrace the future, but I look at it and I'm like, really? Like, these people, like,
but what's weird is, yes, that's true.
You type
Absolutely.
twit into Google and you get a podcast network. What do you mean these people are going to design, AI? Like, what do they even know?
But there are also little gaps that the AI squeezes through that you would never have thought. I just started, I played for years with music generation with AI. And even as recently as 3 years ago, it was truly awful. It would just be painful to the ear. The latest version 4 model of a Suno makes music that, as far as I can tell, is indistinguishable from humans. Now, of course, that's because it's stolen everything from every musician alive.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I mean, that's considerably harder than detecting a hand under a faucet, and yet it can do it. So there's little weird things that AI can do.
Yeah.
And then there's simple things that AI can't do.
Like I've saved a bunch of like rage chats with ChatGPT where I'm just like, I'm screaming at it. Like the most basic thing, like make me a pie chart where the things don't overlap. And it's like, here you go. And it's like, it's clearly overlapping. And it's like, you're right. I'm like, just make it not overlap. And it's like, here you go. And I'm like, it's overlapping. And it's like, oh, you're right. Thank you for pointing that out. I'm like, can you just do the part where you confirm that I'm right first? And inevitably it can't. Like it can't make a pie chart that has text that doesn't overlap. And that's what that's the like against like, oh, we'll be at AGI in a year and a half. It's like, I don't know.
Well, I think the answer is there's no in fact, the idea of a general AI is probably ridiculous because you don't even want a general AI. But what you want is an AI that's very good at not overlapping in pie charts, And I think that's what we're going to end up seeing is very specific tools that are good at what they do. But I wouldn't expect Suno to be able to know whether my hands are under a faucet or not.
No. And to be fair, humans also can only make music that sounds like what other humans have made. So that's
there aren't that many notes.
There's only so many notes
to
in the scale.
3 chords is all you get.
Exactly.
So,
do you see that AI? I mean, you've already mentioned you have AI workflows for clipping stuff up and identifying stuff like that.
Doing show notes. I mean, there's some stuff that it does very well. But almost always my experience is it's in conjunction with a human. Like you don't want it to do it all by itself. You want it to give you a template to start and then the human interacts with it.
Right.
I don't think there are very many situations where you really want the human out of the loop.
And even like, there's a lot of concern I hear about people saying, if AI is going to displace so many jobs, and you've sort of covered a few of the big sort of vertical lines in the history of technology on the timescale, and it's like, oh, you mean the jobs people have, even though the microchip exists and the internet exists and the mobile phone exists, all the jobs that survived those or exist only because of those. This is a
continual process. Yeah.
It's like,
and it's the only difference is it's happening within our view because it's happening so fast now. Within a single lifetime, you're going to see these revolutions, maybe multiple revolutions happen. But yeah, it's always been like this. Which is not to say I don't feel bad for people who lose their jobs because something else can do it. But the good news, I don't think there's many of those in AI as we think. I think that I have friends I have a friend specifically, a young guy who's learning to become an actuary. And I thought, boy, that's something an AI probably could do pretty well, figure out the statistical probability of death. And he said, no, actually, it turns out humans do a much better job even today. And I think that it's probably the case that they will start using AIs, but that they will, just as all data scientists do, they will end up using them as a tool. But the human's not going to be out of the loop. So I'm not too worried about that. Yeah, robots can make cars better than humans, but that's been the case for a long time.
Sure. I just think I have a friend who's an actuary, and my wife rides horses. She does eventing, and every once in a while he'll just go, "How fast does the horse go? For how long?
Yeah, you know what?
How high are the jumps?"
Do you have insurance?
and then at the end of it, he just shakes his head. And so I'm like, I don't know that conversation would land just the same if it was an AI.
It's an occupational hazard.
Yes.
I don't. I'm fascinated by what's happening. I think that everything we know is out the window. That things are happening both faster and slower than we thought. It is kind of chaotic right now with AI. I think is the best way to describe it. We actually. We have a show we've been doing for a long time called This Week in Google. It's almost 15, 16 years. And we realized that Google is not as interesting as it was 15 years ago. But AI is. And so we've decided to kind of, we've already moved the show kind of in that direction anyway. We do less and less Google and more other stuff. But we're going to rebrand it Intelligent Machines. And it's going to be about what's happening in this world. And I think it's a fascinating subject. And there isn't a lot of agreement. You know, you get Jeffrey Hinton and Ray Kurzweil together, and they're going to end up fighting each other because there's a lot of disagreement even among experts. So to me, this is the most excitement I've seen in technology since the internet. And so I think we really want to cover it. So we're going to start doing that next month.
Does Google exist in 10 years as a result of AI? Like that's
I don't know. I mean, certainly search as we know it is being replaced rapidly. I haven't used Google in a long time.
Yeah.
On the one hand, because Google search results have gotten worse and worse. That's Google's fault. They're inshitifying their product. But also on the other hand, an AI is giving me kind of much more useful results. I use a Google replacement called Kagi, but even more now I'm using Perplexity AI for my searches because it'll give me a very, not for trying to find a website. If I'm looking for CacheFly, I'm going to Google CacheFly, right? But if I'm looking for what does a CDN do, that is a very useful tool for AI. And because the good AIs are connected to the internet, so they aren't stuck with a model that they made 2 years ago, like ChatGPT, but also because they give you sources so you can vet what you're getting. I think they've become incredibly useful. I don't do Google search anymore, ever, anywhere.
Yeah, other than my phone, and only because I haven't figured out my new workflow for not
Right.
using it. I'm the same though. I used Perplexity the other day for things searches that used to really would have involved a lot of my time.
Right. Digging down.
Exactly. Like I said, what was I doing? I was trying to see. I didn't want to duplicate efforts. I had a friend looking to see if I could get him a restaurant reservation, and I had like all my list of potential credit cards, and I said, "Here's a list of credit cards. Tell me which ones use which back-end concierge services, so that I only have to call."
That's fascinating.
But like, if I had done that myself, if I was going, okay, who provides concierge service for Amex in Canada? Who provides I would have been 200 clicks per search, writing it down, figuring it out, and Perplexity had it in 20 seconds.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, and it was right. Like I didn't spot check all the answers, but quick, cite your sources.
I have Perplexity as my action button on my iPhone, so I do a chat with it, and I find that very useful. And I use the new It's new, simultaneously new and discontinued. The Arc browser, but on the iPhone, the Arc browser is basically an AI search, and that's when my eyes were really opened. That this is So Google's in trouble. Yes, is the answer. Absolutely.
Bringing it back to existing technology that's has to deal with AI, specifically around podcasts. You mentioned show notes. I see all the work that people are doing, and most of it's kind of gimmicky. Like 2 years ago, it would have been a product feature. Now it's AI with cleaning up audio and stuff like that. But it's sort of lowering the barrier to entry, or at least makes it sound less scary. Like if you said, "Oh, you're going to use this audio editor and it's going to use all these features," I think that's still intimidating for people, as opposed to like, our AI will clean up your audio for you.
Well, it's you look at something like the Script AI, which will take audio, transcribe it, and then you can edit the text transcription and it will edit the audio for you, is a really interesting use. I mean, I know, I came out of radio, so I know how to edit. And I used to do a ton of editing on the show. And so I had a skill that I could use. It wasn't a razor blade and a grease pencil and a piece of tape like I did in the radio days, but I used Adobe Audition, and but now, I've never used it. I don't know if I would use it, but it seems like that's a really interesting application of AI to audio editing. We use specialized programs. We use one called Podium, for instance, for generating the little clips, the social clips, and for the show notes and things like that. I think we've used Anthropic's Claude. It's interesting because everybody's got different abilities and different skills, because part of the search is finding the right AI for that particular job. But that's what I was saying earlier, is that general AI, is a foolish goal. That's not what we're looking for anyway. We don't want to replace ourselves. That would be a bad idea. We want it to be our little helper.
Yeah, I think Paul earlier said, like, he wants AI to be like a really eager high school student intern.
An intern
that just really wants to make you happy.
Forget AGI. We want intern AI.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So,
can I get you a cup of coffee?
Yeah, because I think of that as its goal is to lower the barrier to entry, and talking to people that not just yourself, but other people who've made the transition from radio to podcasting. One of the things that's obvious to me when I think of that is just the amount of stuff that happens behind the scenes in the radio world. If you're on-air talent, that you need not concern yourself with, that all of a sudden you have to be a pseudo expert in all of these things if you're gonna go out and at least try and professionally produce a podcast. Be that
my goal when I started Twit was that I could be like I was in radio, sit down, do a show, and then walk away, and then the podcast would happen magically.
Yeah.
Honestly, these days, I think that my brain was a little polluted by my long relationship with mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
If I were starting from scratch these days, I might think of it very differently. The idea of a edited podcast, I think, truthfully, you probably do just as well to get a laptop, a microphone, a camera if you want, record it on YouTube, and just leave it. Do it live on YouTube, and then just leave it. You don't need to put opening music and a theme and all that mainstream media cruft. Just leave it as a document of what happened, and people would listen to it. They wouldn't feel ripped off in any way. I think show notes are really nice. We always hear from our audience, why don't you chapterize your shows and do more show notes? And all that's very labor intensive. So as AI gets better at that will certainly make them happier. But honestly, if I were just starting out, I might not put all that effort into it that somebody like me coming from mainstream media did for years.
Yeah.
We put a lot more effort into it than you probably need to.
If you did that on YouTube,
yeah,
is that maybe the podcasting discovery solution? Like, is the YouTube algorithm going to be the thing?
Yeah, could very well be. I would make shorts, because that's only because you're, part of the job, if you're going to use an algorithm, is to understand what the algorithm is currently trying to do.
Yep. And
in YouTube's case right now, they want they realize TikTok's going away. They want shorts to be the next TikTok. I think Instagram already won on that. But so do something that shorts will like. Make shorts. Make vertical video. But you could do that and do a regular YouTube thing. Because I have to say, it's also a mistake to chase trends too much. It's better just to do what you want to do and feel right about, and just wait for the trend to come to you, because trends change all the time. It's like a dog chasing its tail. You're never going to catch it.
Yeah.
It's going to move on to something else.
By the time you've identified that it's a trend, it's already no longer the trend.
I have to say, my son, if I remember vividly, a couple of years ago having lunch with him, and he said, what he does, he calls it ASMR cooking. There's a lot of chopping and sizzling and stuff, and he makes these beautiful sandwiches. He had a few thousand followers on TikTok. He said, you think I should keep doing this? And I said, yeah. But what he did that was smart is he noticed what stuff got to the For You page and what didn't, what stuff went viral and what didn't. And he adjusted what he was doing to the algorithm. And the algorithm responded by helping him grow. And he grew very quickly, very fast. And then the next trick, if you're doing that, is to somehow monetize that audience. And it turns out YouTube, but especially TikTok and Instagram, they don't give you any money.
Right.
They pretend they're going to make you rich. YouTube makes a handful of people rich, but I think for the most part, isn't very lucrative. So you have to find side deals. He signed with an agency. They started selling stuff. He now gets stuff sent to him like crazy for free. It's actually become a problem. He has a whole room dedicated to cooking stuff that's just been being sent to him at random. But I was really impressed. He was very smart. He leveraged each step of the way. So when TikTok, he realized I'm going to have to do this on Instagram and YouTube. He did some longer stuff for YouTube. He wrote a cookbook. He started appearing on mainstream media shows. You do all of those things because no one of them is going to be enough. And he was very savvy. So, nowadays the successful creators are good business people as much as they are good creators.
Yeah. And I think there's something in there that's probably important, which is at any point, you probably could have made some sort of case for this isn't working. I should probably stop.
Yeah.
And
every step of the way.
So there's also you just have to put out so much content before anybody, including yourself, is going to figure out what good content looks like.
He's exhausted.
Yeah.
Can I tell you?
Do you know how many videos he's put up, roughly?
No, I should ask. It's probably thousands. But there is this incredible pressure to put something out all the time. And we see this over and over again. Burnout of YouTube creators is incredible because you're only as good as the last video and you're just constantly pushing. He's been, I think, able to kind of navigate it, but it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. He's now opening a restaurant in the West Village in New York City on Bleecker Street, next door to John's Pizza. If you're in the
hopefully it's not a
look
pizza restaurant.
Look for Salt Hanks. It's right next to John's.
What's it called?
Salt Hanks.
Salt Hanks.
That's his Salt Hank. He sells salts, pickles. His cookbook is called Salt Hank, a 5-napkin situation. Here I am plugging my son. And you can you'll be able to, starting probably around this summer, be able to go to get some of his sandwiches at Salt Hanks on Bleecker Street next to John's Pizza.
I'm there. City. I mean,
he's had LA pop-ups. The last thing he did in LA pop-up, he did a French dip, sold out in minutes. I mean,
does he promotes the pop-up on TikTok?
Oh, of course. Yeah. It's all wheels within wheels.
Yeah.
It's really fun for me to watch because I am very old school. I came from radio and TV, right? Yeah. I'm as old school as you can get. And I don't understand any of this. And he's always saying, Dad, your social's terrible. Yeah, I know. That's not me, man. But that's you.
Yeah.
But I don't know where he learned it, but he learned it. But what he did get from me was a little bit of showbiz, a little bit of desire to create, perform. And so which is great. He's done it in the modern vernacular, which I love. I'm just really proud of him. Yeah.
Do you think he would have a hard time pulling his audience into like a long form podcast? Like
he did. He tried to do longer form stuff on YouTube and it never got the same. So that's when he started calling himself ASMR Cooking, because he realized he understood better why people watched his stuff. You know? It's not a recipe show. It's not a cooking show. It's not Julia Child. It's because you want to, kind of drool while you're watching him chop stuff and sizzle stuff.
Do you worry, to the extent that you worry about the format, which is maybe I should have asked that first, but do you think that podcasting is going to have a new listener problem as the TikTok generation becomes the people that we need to listen?
It's already happened. And that's the other reason for the flight of ad dollars is advertisers and agencies, they want to buy influencers. They want to buy short form. They want to buy TikTok. They want to buy Instagram. So that's where those dollars are going. What's funny is they were going to the Marquez Brownlees of the world, the long form YouTube videos. And I think even those influencers are getting dinged a little bit by the short form guys. So, but that's the nature of the beast. And unfortunately, I'm old enough and I saved carefully over the last 20 years that it's fine with me. It's, Peter Gabriel has a line in his newest album where he says, the children move to the center, the parents to the frame. This is the way of the world, right? And I'm thrilled that my kids are moving to the center now, and I'm content. When you get to a certain age, I'm content to move to the frame. I never wanted to be famous. I just wanted to make a nice living talking about stuff I cared about. And I never worried so much if, our shows are sometimes 3 hours long. Any consultant would tell me, oh, Leo, that's too long. You got to shorten those shows up. I don't care.
Yeah.
That's how long it takes. And if as long as there's some people who want to hear it and some advertisers who want to buy it, and enough, we have a club also, enough patrons. That's one thing that's really changed the space a little bit, is that you don't have to make all your money through advertising. You can have, when I first started, I wanted to do this, but there weren't the mechanisms. But thanks to Patreon and stuff like that, there are the mechanisms now for you to create a club, have patrons, the old school, everybody's a Medici now. and your $5 a month makes a huge difference in aggregate. So there are a lot of creators now who aren't huge. You maybe never even heard of them, but they have enough of a supporting. This is why I go back to that. Community is more important than audience. Yeah. Audience is what you get for advertisers. Community is when you create a community around yourselves that likes what you do and supports you. And to the extent that we've been able to do that, that gives me the courage to keep doing 3-hour shows.
Well,
I'm sorry.
And I think Dave Hamilton said that his community said, stop giving us the ad-free version. We want to hear we
like the ads.
We want, if you're promoting something, we might want to buy it. Why would you take it away from us?
Yeah, we had that same problem. So we created a feed on our Discord that's called All the Ads and Just the Ads, and you can hear the ads, including your CacheFly ads. So if you miss them, you can listen to the ad-free versions and then listen to the ads. Although I do notice a lot of people who don't have to listen to the versions with ads do. Yeah, they subscribe to that. So that's fine. That's even better.
I don't want the Super Bowl. Just give me the ads.
Yeah, well, for some things that's true.
Yeah,
I mean, I hate it when I buy a Hulu or something and I give them $15 and I'm still seeing ads. That makes me nuts.
Yeah,
so I would never do that to people. But if that's what you want, hey, more power to you.
There you go. All right. Well, before I let you go, in your words, 20 years or so, where has podcasting and Twit? Where did it start? Where are we now? And then where do you see podcasting 10 years from now?
Boy, that's a really tough question. So we were very lucky because I had already an audience from somebody once tried to insult me saying, you're a minor celebrity on an unknown cable network. And I said, yes, exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly what I wanted. But I was able to translate that into a following in podcasting. And I feel very fortunate that I've been able to do this for 20 years. It's mind blowing. I never, it didn't exist when I was getting out of school. It's like, oh, I'm going to be a podcaster. What's that? I have a career that is unheard of, except that it really is kind of like the radio career that I always wanted. But I'm my own boss. I have my own company. It's funny, when I started in radio, every DJ I knew said, someday I'm going to own a radio station. And in a way, I kind of did that. So I'm very satisfied with that. I understand that what we do on Twit is kind of old school. Isn't that amazing? We're old school podcasting. I don't know if that term is going to survive in the world of TikTok and Instagram and YouTube Shorts. And I think one thing that's obvious is that people don't watch TV anymore; they watch YouTube.
Right.
That the networks, and to some degree the streamers even, have a real problem ahead of them because nobody under 25 watches anything but YouTube.
Yeah.
I wonder if Google's going to keep that monopoly. I think at some point there will be other sources for it. But what people have told us old school media types is we want genuine, passionate people talking about things they care about in an unadorned, unaffected way. We want authenticity. And so I'd bet on that. And it really is what we were talking about earlier. It is your social circle. It is your friends. It's your people. So to the degree that I shouldn't say podcaster, a host a person can create an audience that considers them their best friend, that's the degree of success you'll have. And I think that's not going away. We need it more than ever, don't we?
Yeah. You know, you mentioned
that's the future.
You mentioned a few times things go in cycles. Is there, and we might be in the middle of it if you look at what Spotify is doing, maybe. But do we ever end up back in the cycle where this is controlled by media conglomerates and there's gatekeepers and stuff, or is that just gone now?
I think it's changed. Elon Musk is now a gatekeeper, right? So, to the degree you need a lot of capital to reach a large number of people, they're going to be gatekeepers because not everybody has the billions it takes to buy X, right? Yeah. But I think we are all getting mighty tired of gatekeepers. And I think we are more and more realizing that mainstream media and to some degree even new media like blogs and podcasts exist to grab our eyeballs against our will, and we're ready for something different. So it is amazing that you don't need to have $44 billion to start a podcast, to build an audience, to make a living. I think the days of super platinum artists, rock and roll stars might be over.
Yeah.
But that's not a bad thing. It means that there'll be thousands of successful Chapel Roans and people who will come out of nowhere, shaboozis who will make music that people love and will make a living at it. And they may not be Taylor Swift, but that's okay. I think that's better. I would like to hear more voices, not fewer voices. And I would definitely like to see a media that is not controlled by giant corporations with multiple conflicts of interest. I mean, NBC, Comcast, Universal, are you kidding? How can you trust anything they say? They have too many subsidiary interests to be straightforward.
Yeah.
You know, Leo Laporte's got nothing. I'm up here in my attic. I got nothing to sell but me, baby.
And what a lovely attic it is.
It is a very nice attic.
It is.
I wish there were more people in it, but that's okay. It's too small for people.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop taking up too much more of your precious time, Leo.
It's so great to talk to you, Matt. I just wish there'd been a steak here somewhere.
I will make a promise that there will be a steak involved somewhere soon.
Hey, we didn't even go to CES this year, right?
Yeah.
That's not even a thing anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll find a way to make it happen.
Okay.
I'd
like that.
Thanks, Leo.
Thanks, Matt.
Cheers.
This is different, another round, so much more to talk about. Gonna aim to satisfy with help from CacheFly. Get to it fast. Right here on the Anycast. Make it strong, make it last. Right here on the Anycast. The Anycast podcast, brought to you by CacheFly.